I'm Katrina Menzigian, and I lead our Analyst Relations Engagement Program. And that means I spend my time on behalf of Everest Group listening to the Analyst Relations community, participating in discussions with you to understand what's on your mind, what you need to be successful, and how you're experiencing our firm, and making sure that we align accordingly. I am very happy to welcome you to this first of the year webinar. We always kick off the calendar year with an AR focused webinar, and this is the third or fourth year we're doing it. And so it's a little bit of a pride thing to be the first ones to talk to our audience in the year. I'm joined today by two of my really favorite colleagues who have been in this space for many years. Chirajit Sengupta is a managing partner, and Abhishek Singh is our partner. Together, they and we follow the technology markets that Everest Group tracks and talks to many of you and your executives. We'll be, if we go to the next slide, let me lay out the agenda for you. So one of the reasons, to take advantage of CJ and Abhishek being on the call with us today is to look at a couple of key trends, key developments in the marketplace that we're all talking about, but to give you fact-based, research-based perspectives in these areas. One of them is agentic AI, and the other are ecosystems of the future, for you to have some very fresh insights that will be helpful in your knowledge of these spaces and how you think about it and how you maybe structure your practice and conduct your own conversation. So we wanted to bring some of the best of Everest Group research to the forefront for our analyst relations audience. Then I'll be looking at how can AR respond to some of these developments, and what do we think based on our interaction with AR, as well as your peers in the marketplace, looking to the future focus of the AR profession itself. And then lastly, we'll share some examples of what we think are really kind of best practice cases for how to develop a relationship with an AR team from an Everest Group point of view, and how we've actually done this with some key accounts out in the marketplace. And then, of course, we'll leave time for question and answer. Before we move forward, though, I do want to remind everybody that this call is recorded, and as long as you're registered, you will have the opportunity to listen to it again, and encourage you to reach out to your colleagues, reach out to your peers, and as long as they register, even if it's after today, they will also have access to this content. So maybe you have some colleagues who couldn't join today, and you want them to hear what we were talking about. And the last housekeeping point I want to mention is that we want to offer you, as an AR professional, a unique opportunity for attending today's session. So if any of the folks on the call today are analyst relations professionals and have registered with us, we are offering you a deeply discounted ticket price to attend the Everest Group Elevate event in September of 26. It'll be in Dallas. And we had this event last year with a lot of success. We had an AR focused panel session where I was joined by a few of your peers who together we talked about some key topics for AR. But the whole conference, Everest Group Elevate, is focused on the growth dynamic for vendor and provider organizations, which means that analyst relations is part of that dynamic, and we want you to have a seat at the table throughout the event, as well as having a track of your own. So we are making these discounted tickets available to encourage you to participate next year, or at this point, later this year. Okay, with that, can we go to the next slide? Wanted to also highlight a few initiatives that we have ongoing and underway here at Everest Group that are meant to maximize the value of analyst relations interaction with our firm. So the biggest topic, of course, for everybody, ourselves as well as you, is to look at what's going on with RFIs. And with technology innovation, with AI, with other dynamics, it's an important space for us to constantly, as a firm, be monitoring and optimizing. So with that spirit, we rolled out a number of changes in 2025, and they're going to continue in 26. So these include things like trying to reduce the workload associated with an individual RFI by bringing in some intelligent RFI tools. And we have a whole working group on this, and expect to see more from us as we bring, I'm always asked, how is Everest Group adopting AI for the purposes of its work? You will see that come through in some of our upcoming tools. Another area is to realize that we need to constantly apply appropriate filters to rationalize who we invite to which RFIs so that you don't get too many and that we are targeting our outreach efforts correctly. So we have a process and a technology effort underway to rationalize the invitation lists for RFI participation. And then the third area we're looking at is volume right sizing. So we all appreciate that the volume of RFIs that you receive and that are out in the marketplace for research projects has continued to grow over the last several years. With that in mind, we are also doing things to help streamline existing RFIs so that we can get more leverage out of individual RFIs, as well as assessing how many we truly need to do to accomplish the kind of research outcomes that we're looking for, or output that we're looking for. So you'll see all of this from us. Real quickly to go through the other three, I've already mentioned a little bit about Elevate. So that's the first item here, our growth-focused Everest Group event, where AR is very much part of the conversation. But I also want to put on your radar screen the parallel event that we have called Everest Group Engage, which is in Dallas, Bangalore, and London, both this year and both in 25 and 26. And this is where we are bringing together large groups of enterprise decision makers and have a targeted group of providers and vendors who are participating. And the conversation is really more from the enterprise point of view, the buyer. But we want AR to be aware of this because oftentimes you are bringing these to your providers and your partners, your marketing, your stakeholders. And we want you to be part of that effort on behalf of your firm. The two other things on this slide is that we have historically had a regular cadence of AR-focused LinkedIn Lives that we will continue to do into 26. We just had one at the middle of December that was really successful. And we will continue to deliver our quarterly Analyst Relations newsletter. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up for that as well. So on that note, I am now ready to transition things over to Chirajit CJ, and we'll talk a little bit about agentic AI. CJ, over to you.
Thank you, Katrina. Let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah, agentic AI, without doubt, and even not taking into consideration our 2025 hangovers, I'm barely out of it yet. But all things being said, without any doubt, this is the hottest buzzword of our times right now. In true Everest Group style, I'm going to talk through a little bit of myth busting in terms of what it is not and where the market is not at right now, despite everything that we read on LinkedIn. But I'll also talk about why we can all be incredibly excited about the future. Next slide, please. So the first myth and that I really want to bust is lies in terminology. Having agents does not mean it is agentic. Agentic means that it has agency, and surprise, surprise, having agents does not mean that it has agency, right? So if you really think about how this technology has been evolving, think of a very narrow task. For example, can something fetch code from a code base, right? That's a task. That's a super narrow task. Can it fetch data from a particular database when prompted? That's a super narrow task, right? So we've been there. That's all of us agree that's been done. Where we are today is where multiple such narrow tasks can be accomplished by different agents, and they can all be orchestrated together by a master agent, which kind of drives towards a coherent workflow. So, for example, if I take the same analogy, okay, there are multiple agents fetching code from different code bases or data from different databases. Then there's a master agent which puts together the sequence of those tasks that need to be accomplished in the right sequence. Code is compiled, code is tested, data is compiled, data is analyzed in a particular way, and then pushed into production or synthesized into a consumable format. So essentially, we're talking about multiple task agents be working in cohesion and orchestrated by automation tools and master agents to accomplish a particular workflow endpoint, right? So if you look at it, what we are really doing is we are moving the needle on goal orientation. We are getting better at process scope, right? No surprises. We are getting broader as we stitch together multiple point use cases. We are getting better at planning and sequencing. We are getting better at that orchestration and the communication. What we are really not moving the needle on is autonomy, right? That's still a far way to go. And we are not getting better at self-reflection and self-correction and context-based judgment of the technology that makes dynamic adjustments as it on the fly as it goes, right? So we are still far from context-aware agents and autonomous agents, despite everything that we may hear to the contrary, despite all the buzz, right? Yes, we are seeing early, exciting points of successful experimentation, but in terms of real enterprise grade production value, proof points, we are still some distance away from true agency. We do see lots of situations where we get enterprise grade production quality multi-agent orchestration. That's still not the same as true agency. Next slide. So if you think about it, if this is where we are, why should we still be widely excited? Because while we are still some distance away, the future is clearly visible, right? We can see the direction in which it is headed. We can see the successful experimentation. We can see the path that is taking. We study a lot of innovation in terms of advanced technologies. What are the intellectual property patents coming in? What are the experiments that are being run? What's the scientific literature around it? And all of us believe that that future of true agency is going to happen, right? It's going to take time, but it's going to happen. But in the meantime, what's going to happen to the market opportunity that lies for all software and services companies? So if you look at what's happening in agentic AI products, right, we're roughly more than doubling every year. Even conservatively, if we assume that we are only going to double, right, not too hard, right, given the pace at which we are seeing adoption, or as our bosses would tell us, not too hard to double every year. But jokes apart, we see this market expanding and exploding by an order of magnitude. So, we believe we are, by the end of 2026, we are going to be at roughly $500 million worth of enterprise spend on agentic AI products, right? That's going to roughly quadruple in another 2 years, right? When it comes to services, the tied services or the associated, I shouldn't use the word tied, but if you really think of the broad landscape of associated services, be it process modernization, process reengineering, process rewiring, process mining, because all of that stuff needs to be done for agentic AI to succeed and operate in an enterprise setting. all of that represents a massive opportunity. If you think of the data modernization, if you think of the code modernization, if you think of the infrastructure modernization, that's another massive vector of opportunity for the services market, right? So all of this points us to tremendous acceleration and expansion in the addressable market for both products and services, directly or indirectly, as a result of agentic AI. Now, we always get the question, what happens to traditional services? Sure, a lot of traditional services will not, be consumed the same way or may get cannibalized, right? But we have no doubt that the expansion in the TAM is almost a certainty. Next slide, please. The question really that comes to my mind, right? So this is a supply side opportunity for us, right? But if you really think about it, the history of technology is fundamentally about the supply side pulling the demand side in terms of readiness to adopt. So what are we really seeing on the demand side? We are seeing broadly three flavors of risk reward appetite in our customers. Some customers want to move really slowly, and not to put too fine a point on it. There are enterprises which will fall by the wayside by virtue of being below that horizontal line of zone of inaction, right? We live in disruptive times. Disruption is real. Some are going to make it, some are going to be too slow to adapt, right? And our responsibility as the supply side ecosystem and as advisors is to push everybody towards the green and the blue, right? We see many, many situations where enterprises are looking at an evolution scenario where they want to embed AI within the traditional process framework, within the traditional technology operating model, fundamentally with a view to getting efficiency gains, right? We, however, also see a set of customers who are operating with a reinvention mindset, where they're open to re-examining the entire operating model, the entire process, excuse me, where they're open to looking at a much more radical worldview of the future. And what's interesting is we see RFPs, both services, products, where this plays out, right? This is not theoretical, but we are seeing this play out. So, for example, the kind of granularity of details they're asking for in terms of AI and agentic solutions, the kind of benefits they're looking, the kind of front loading of benefits they're seeking, the kind of risks they're willing to undertake, right? That shows us very clearly in RFPs all the time, right? And the kind of investments they're willing to make, the kind of co-investments and the kind of risk sharing they're willing to make, right? All of that varies dramatically. So while this slide feels like a theoretical framework, we are seeing this play out in real time in terms of mindsets and how they play out in purchase decisions and buying considerations, right? And the other interesting thing is we see within the same client organization in different processes, different technology stacks, different mindsets playing out. So there are some parts of the enterprise which will be operating at a zone of opportunity. There will be other parts of the enterprise which will be operating in a reinvention scenario, right? And I think the key takeaway there is understand very clearly which situation is what, right? Because that's the situational alertness all of us need to exhibit. Next slide. Let's talk a little bit about what's the supply side ecosystem shaping up. So on the left, you'll see just our assessment of where we see, what simply the number of mentions that we get in our inquiries, in our research for multiple agentic AI players, right? Microsoft AutoGen, followed by LangChain, followed by a bunch of others, right? That's what we are seeing. However, interestingly, in the future, what we believe is going to happen is that there are going to be a set of very large horizontal players but there's going to be an increasingly competitive ecosystem around specialized software players, ISVs, who will anchor around industry specific value. And in some ways, this is something that we have seen in multiple technology categories over the decades. Starts out as horizontal, and then eventually the supply side ecosystem starts differentiating against specific industry specific or function specific categories, right? And we believe this is already underway, and this is going to happen. This is just going to accelerate further going on, right? So, key messages: incredible opportunity. However, the future is not there yet. Different mindsets in different customers. Key to understand which mindset is playing out in which commercial situation and adjust your value proposition accordingly. Value is increasingly going to consolidate at a horizontal level. Differentiation will be driven by industry specific or function specific solutions, right? With that, let's hear a little bit from everybody here on our session today, right? Oh, I also need to talk a little bit about pricing and what we're seeing playing out in bid situations just before we go to voice of the floor. What, in a nutshell, what we're seeing is a lot of 25 was a lot of hand waving on AI and Gen AI and agentic, right? Increasingly, that's being called out, and we are seeing our customers, buyers, enterprise community getting smarter and smarter and asking sharper and sharper question around which use case, which solution, prove to me that you are going to be using AI and not some other cost lever. So we are not just increasingly the questioning is not just around the outcome, but the how, right? And the more clarity all of us can bring into the conversation, the more precision we can bring into the conversation, the better off we all are. So I jumped the gun on hearing from you, but let me not stand between that any further. Here's a first poll. So let's hear it from the AR professionals. What's really high priority about AI and agentic for 2026? Yeah, we have the poll live and we'll show the results in around 40 seconds or so. Love to hear from you in terms of what are the options, which are the highest priorities from your standpoint, in your organization standpoint, right? Um, Abhishek, while we wait to hear from our audience, what do you think is going to be the highest, what is going to be the most important priority?
Tongue in cheek, the last option, because that's what I'm going to talk about. But jokes apart, I think the most important question, which you teed up on the last slide itself, is how do we really make agentic AI real? And how can it be programmatically tracked in order to create value? I think the measurable customer outcomes and ROI from deployed AI use cases will continue to be the thing that most organizations will continue to work on. And that speaks for not only buy side organizations, but ecosystem players also who are making that real for organizations.
Yep. I think we're still some distance away from showing very concrete measures around our ROI, except on an use case basis. I think, as you know, the trick about some of this is ROI on this can be shifting goalpost, right? Because the system itself is not static and the technology continues to get more and more exciting, right?
Mhm.
But I think early proof points around ROI, etc., might be more around operational outcomes rather than hard financial metrics, right? But
Yeah.
just my sense.
Yeah, I think that's why each of these seem equally important to me. I know we are forcing people to choose between them, rank them, But yeah. Oh, did we lose the slides?
Looks like, let me see, I'm going to end the poll so we get some of those results.
Okay.
So you're able to see the pop-up with the results?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like we got,
Okay. Okay, we are back.
oh, good. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Can I ask our, oh, wow, we're having a little bit of Zoom problems. So if you guys can give us a second here.
Yeah, so I think 1 and 2 are the highest priorities, right? So making it real in terms of real implementations, real impact, real autonomy, right? Beyond pilots and proof of concept and real ROI and real outcomes. I think those two are our highest priority, right? And the rest kind of follow, right? I think, Abhishek, to your point, right? Fifth option comes across as third most popular. So that's also interesting, right? And one of the key things about agentic is we are firmly of the belief that it's an ecosystem play, right? There's no one ring to bind them all. This is about process. This is about technology. This is about, so many different layers of the stack, right? So I think that's a good segue to talk about ecosystems.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to take this as a personal affront that something that I'm so close to is third in rank, and I'm going to bump it up through my narrative and convince you all that ecosystem partners is going to be the thing. Next slide, please. Okay. So we've heard about ecosystems. CJ talked through it a bit. But in 2026, what I wanted to really highlight was the meaningful change here is not so much that ecosystems matter. I think that's table stakes. All of us know that. It's that ecosystems are becoming the primary mechanism through which revenue gets created and defended for a lot of service and tech organizations. So what I will be doing in the next few slides is I'll ground this in data on how partner-linked revenue is showing up, where deals are concentrating, and last but not the least, how the deal mix itself is shifting. What I also wanted to call out here is that since the bulk of the audience is from analyst relations side, the key implication for AR professionals is straightforward. Continue improving your ability to explain your ecosystem play, not only as an operating model, but as a go-to-market model. And that is going to be an important part of the narrative that I will continue to play out in the following slides. Next slide, please. So what is this slide about? This slide is about how partnership monetization itself is structurally changing. Historically, GSI tech partnerships have monetized through scale, resell, consumption-linked economics, and standardized delivery rewarded by reach, volume, and execution capacity. The reality is that model still drives a large share of revenue today. But as AI-led transformation becomes central, which CJ, thank you for talking through it in such great detail, the differentiator itself is changing. The differentiator this day is becoming what you can package, reuse, and deploy with minimal friction. And all of these link to how execution happens within the enterprise environment. And that is why, if you look at these monetization levers, the value will increasingly start to concentrate in marketplace-led services and IP-based offerings, where these capabilities that you take to the market can be standardized and scaled. So for organizations where you work, this marks a transition from partnerships which are optimized for scale to partnerships that are optimized for frictionless execution. And specifically for AR professionals, This means ecosystem narratives that you talk through need not just be a checkbox in the overall narrative. They need to evolve in step with that shift, supported by metrics and proof that show how value is actually being created from an ecosystem perspective. Next slide, please. Now I'll be taking you through some numbers. What you see here is a comparison of partner-linked versus direct enterprise revenue across major technology firms. I selected a few just to make my point. The important detail, what I want to call out here, is the definition itself. Partner-linked revenue is our estimate of the share of the B2B revenue where a partner is formally engaged at one or more points across the life cycle of a customer engagement. Which could include co-sell, include marketplace interactions, delivery, managed services, and it is distinct from how we typically like to call out revenue invoiced through partners. So that's where the distinction is. So when you now look at this chart, after having gone through my definition, whether it's Microsoft, AWS, Google, Salesforce, and ServiceNow, the pattern is quite consistent. A very large share of enterprise revenue is already partner linked. So what makes this significant is not the percentage itself. It is the implication that the ecosystem performance is already embedded in core revenue outcomes for some of the largest tech players out there in the market. So again, repeating, this is not a forward-looking argument. This is a current state reality as it exists. The point that I want to assert is that ecosystem execution is not a peripheral capability as it seems like today. It is directly tied to revenue predictability and growth. When partner-linked revenue is this material, whether it is us as analysts or customers who you will be speaking with will expect vision and clarity when it comes to that. They will look for clarity on where partners influence revenue, how value is being shared across multiple ecosystem partners, and how the outcomes themselves are governed. So the question is not whether ecosystems matter, but where and in what ways do they show up on the customer side. So that is what we will cover on the next slide. Let's bring up the next slide. Yes. This slide is the current map of where partner-linked deals show up most today. In IT functions, it's data, application, cloud, and security, largely because they are foundational to how enterprises are re-architecting for AI as well as operational scale. However, if you look at industries, industries like BFSI and healthcare show up prominently because transformation there has to work within regulatory risk and legacy constraints. And when we look at business operations, customer experience, finance, and supply chain stand out because technology there is directly tied to measurable business outcomes. While this gives you a current picture, the implicit takeaway from this chart is the direction where it is going. As you can notice, partner-linked deals are already manifesting most where complexity is higher. And that is what sets us up for what's likely to happen in the coming few years. And that is what the next slide is about. Can we move to the next slide? This slide actually makes the direction explicit. As partner-linked work continues to move deeper into industry-specific and operation-specific transformation, this mix shifts accordingly. Don't read this as IT becoming less important. It is about incremental ecosystem growth being pulled into areas where complexity is significantly higher, where outcomes are closer to the business, and accountability is more visible and expected. And that is what leads to a clear implication. As partner-linked work shifts deeper into industry and operations, what matters is the maturity of partner-led orchestration stories you can credibly prove to the market out there, to the enterprises, to the functional leaders, to the CIOs. And that is what is the topic of the poll question, which will be popping up next. Let's move to that. So the question for you here is, which aspect of your partner ecosystem is most mature and ready for showtime in 2026? Whether it is joint customer case studies with named partners, whether it is about clearly defined partner roles across sell, build, and run. Is it about repeatable joint go-to-market motions already working at scale? Is it about established governance and delivery accountability across the partner ecosystem that you work with? Or is it about measurable ecosystem impact demonstrated through customer outcomes? As you are answering through this, think about which aspect of your ecosystem play is best documented, operationalized, and measurable. And while also thinking through elements that you are currently working on, which will make your story look more robust. As the responses keep coming in, do be thinking about this element of the nature of complex requirements that is going to be important to deal with in a lot of enterprises where regulation matter, risk matters. There are components which are enterprises which they will try to buy off the shelf and plug and play versus which are unique to their constraints, their context, for which an orchestration play that really goes into the weeds of that will be required. All right, as the responses are coming up, I can see. All right, let's show the results. Interesting. I think the two most important things that have popped up here are clearly defined partner roles across sell, build, and run, and the repeatable joint go-to-market motions already working at scale, which is expected, but also brings out to fore what's really important as regards the current state of motion regarding how whether it's tech players or GSI consulting resellers working together. I think that clarity of joint go-to-market motions continues to be an important aspect, and that will continue to drive and anchor how partnerships will continue to work. Interestingly, measurable ecosystem impact demonstrated through customer outcomes is the next biggest preference and thing that you think are really maturing. That's something for me as I'm looking at the evolution, really heartening to see. So on that note, and with these two important implications laid out for you, one on agentic AI and how ecosystem will evolve, let me hand it over to Katrina to take us to the end.
Abhishek, CJ, for laying out some of these, important developments that we all hear about, but getting down to some nuances that we can apply to what our day-to-day work looks like. So we're going to talk a little bit about positioning AR for impact within this context that we just talked about. So if we can go to the next slide. What I wanted to share here, and if we go one more slide, is that there's three areas that are going to be value generators in 2026 for analyst relations teams. One is that with the dynamics that we just heard about in relation to ecosystems, the stakeholder groups that may be within the purview, within the mandate of the AR team is evolving, and more for some firms and less for others, but it is continuing to evolve, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about AI and AR and how that is evolving. I mean, I get the chance to talk to a lot of you that are in the AR space, and I'm hearing about your concerns as well as your initiatives. And so I'm going to offer a reflection on where I see things currently and where the opportunity is. And then the third is the opportunity with this evolving, with the first two things that are evolving, to think about how does AR access management influence? How does AR have a seat at the table to be a more strategic part of the growth dynamic? That's going to be the third thing that we talk about. So if we move forward, the topic of growing impact in the sense of the number of stakeholders that fall under the analyst relations purview. Now, for some sectors like ISVs, the focus on partners within the AR team has been more of a long-standing sort of element to varying degrees. And for service providers, it's been a bit more opportunistic. Some service providers have AR stakeholders, AR practitioners focused on partnerships, but not all. Regardless of which group you fall into, one of the things that clearly came out as a learning from our Everest Group Engage event in September was we had a panel of very senior C-suite executives on stage talking about, it was both service providers and technology vendors talking about how they work together. And they all agreed, whether they were services or technology, that they expect the share of their revenue coming from partnerships and alliances to continue to grow, to be even more important, and in some cases, the dominant channel. And so you may be experiencing this. I'm trying to validate it for you, that it is a reality across the industry. And so what I wanted to draw your attention to here is what comes with that from an AR point of view. So, for example, to increase your ability to drive really meaningful collaboration with the AR team of a partner organization, you now have more complexity than just interacting with analysts directly. You're now teaming up with another AR team to impact analyst opinion. So that requires very strong communication skills, a lot of planning skills, a lot of coordination that you may not have to deal with today. So keep the process aspects of that in mind and keep the talent requirements of that in mind so that you have folks in those roles who are able to navigate that complexity. Another thing that I think is a best practice that might be a goal to strive for is to be able to create active case studies about the outcomes that that partnership itself delivers to that mutual client. And so having that case study allows you to tell compelling stories to the analysts that you're out there talking to, and you'll have a consistent story with that partner's AR team and offering that story to analysts. And at the same time, as you endeavor down this path, you need a mechanism to monitor and assess the outcome of these campaigns, these collaborative campaigns, these collaborative AR workflows. So, having that clarity and communication up front can translate into better monitoring and assessing and hopefully better outcomes. But having those internal mechanisms specifically targeting how you do AR when it comes to partnerships and alliances. Now, another stakeholder that many AR teams are talking more and more about are the influencers in the marketplace. And my question is always, who are the influencers, right? This was one of the topics that we covered in our LinkedIn Live, and our colleague, not our colleague, but the colleague of the AR industry, Lucinda Henry, was covering this one especially. But, how do you define an influencer from the point of view of your firm? You see folks all the way from individual thought leaders or individual pundits to small groups that have emerged of like-minded influencers. So figuring that out, and then figuring out, secondly, who owns the relationship with those influencers. Does it sit with AR? Does it sit with marketing? And then perhaps there's an opportunity for both AR and marketing to collaborate when it comes to influencing influencers. And what kind of outcomes do you want? Where do they fit into the growth equation? What do you look to influencers for within your bigger strategy of being out there and talking to analysts and partners and influencers? Who fits into where, and what's your expectation of impact from these individuals? And how do you map that out into a productive workflow for your organization? So I expect to be hearing a lot more about both partners and influencers in my conversations with AR. It's not just a marketing issue, it's an AR issue as well. Next slide, please. So then the topic of AI, right? We even got some questions about AI in our pre-event registration form, right? What's going on with AI and AR. So first of all, I'm strongly of the belief that AI is not going to replace analyst relations. And you know this, but your stakeholders need to understand that there's more to analyst relations than bringing information to their organization. Just like there's more than research to bringing information to organizations. It's about putting context around that information. It's about mapping it to the decisions and questions coming up organically within the organization, and then how to action and execute on those. So that was just kind of my initial thoughts on AI and AR. But it hints to the fact that AR is struggling a little bit with how to incorporate AI, as well as what does it mean for the future of AR. So in my view, what I have seen happening, and we have, my peers here who probably have experienced this as well, there's a realm of low-hanging fruit when it comes to adoption of AI that's tied to individual practitioners and individual AR teams, where you have control over your own workflow. So this could mean, using AI tools to summarize the analyses from multiple reports that are put out by a key analyst who you follow closely and think is particularly relevant and influential, and using that to get the most intelligence out of that analyst's work, right? That's up to the individual AR team or AR practitioner. Similarly, you could be doing a similar dynamic of using AI to analyze what one firm is saying about a given topic against another firm by analyzing larger quantities or bodies of their work to come up with some analysis that's relevant to how your firm wants to look at the topic. But these two things together create a third opportunity where an AR practitioner utilizing some of these AI tools might actually become sort of an internal content creator or content channel of their own, where they are mapping the research you have access to the kinds of questions that your practitioners are working on, your stakeholders are working on, and you are able to disseminate this through a channel, an internal channel of your own, right? But all of these examples sit within your immediate control. Where I see the challenge that is still being worked out is in the case of cross-team collaboration in the AR workflow that contains dependencies with data sets and teams outside of the AR organization. So being able to compile intelligence across the firm on a target client account, right? You need sales, you need BD, you need different data sets for you to be able to help present a view that you now do manually, but is the data integration there for you to be able to do it using AI? Same thing with RFI workflows and checking the data, bringing it in from different parts of the organization. How's this data being synchronized? How's this data being available to you when it comes to RFIs? And then similarly, being able to complete an RFI, being able to data check it, being able to have your legal team review it. All of that is dependencies outside of the AR team. And so this is where unfortunately, the AR team is not at the top of the list of the roadmap for a lot of organizations in terms of rolling out more sophisticated AI. So this will take some time. And the third point in this area that I wanted to highlight, if we could go to the next slide, is about getting a seat at the table. So I'm not going to go through all of this here because I think some of this is familiar to you already. But there are a couple of things that are important to me to highlight. And that is broadening that AR mandate means redefining how your audiences internally think about AR and the kinds of conversations they can have with AR, right? So being able to show that you have influence with some of those additional stakeholders we talked about in a few slides ago, the partners as well as the influencers. Being able to think about the fact that you are not there to manage research contracts and manage RFI dots exclusively. You're there to take all of that and have meaningful conversations with your executives and showing them that there is a strategic element to the work that you do that needs to be on the conversation table and how you fit into the growth workflow or the growth dynamic at your organization. So one of the things that I have heard and found to be especially impactful is for your AR team to identify those executives in different lines of business, be it horizontal, be it vertical, be it geographic, that are open to collaboration, that are open to having that outside in view of the world, that are interested in learning from colleagues around the firm. That it's a personal issue, right? It's a mindset and a leadership issue. But those are the leaders with whom you can build that kind of collaborative relationship. Then that creates case studies of how you've worked internally, what value you've brought into the conversation, that will then pull you into more conversations over time. So I'm going to leave this slide on that thought. We have one more quick section, and I wanted to highlight some examples of how Everest Group has worked with AR teams. I think I'm going to pass on this poll in the interest of time and move to the next section. Thank you. So talking about Everest Group's partnership with AR teams, let's move forward. I want you to, if we can move to the next slide, one more. First of all, some of you know us very well. Some of you may be hearing us for the first time. Just to give you a quick snapshot of Everest Group, we are over 400 analysts around the world. We are serving 8 of the 12 largest companies in the world and 10 of the 12 largest technology companies in the world. What this means is that, it is common for us to have over 5,000 interactions with senior executive stakeholders, enterprise executive stakeholders in a given year, through our inquiries, through our webinars, through our custom projects, through our custom research, through our events. We are interacting with your customers. We follow over 5,000 different kinds of technology innovations. We have over 7,000 GBS centers that we track and monitor and engage with. So there's a lot going on at Everest Group that we're happy to tell you more about. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. One of the key things I wanted to also point out here is that I don't know how you perceive research, the role of research, but wanted to share with you that many of the stakeholders that you interact with on a daily basis, from strategy to product owners to sales and marketing to channels and ecosystems, they are the same stakeholders, provider and vendor stakeholders with whom we interact on a daily basis, with whom CJ and Abhishek and all the other analysts that you know are interacting with. And keep in mind that the Everest Group model is that the person doing research and the person doing custom work and the person doing inquiries, they're all the same team. We have a team approach and it's the same teams. So we get to experience your firm across these stakeholders in different contexts. And that allows us to develop a deeper understanding of your organization. And so the next couple of cases, if we can move on to the next slide, highlights how that manifests. And so I'm trying to help you envision what this kind of a research relationship might look like for you. So these are case studies, but they're case studies of relationships that we have with a particular client organization. So in this case, we're looking at a global hyperscaler who was looking to build out their library of content and thought leadership. And the reason that this is interesting is that context matters here. Our analysts and their AR team have had an ongoing relationship, and their AR team really is empowered by their corporate leadership to be part of the growth conversation, right? They have that permission and expectation from leadership. So if we look at it, at the core, we have a standard AR analyst engagement around membership, around events, around RFIs. But then, for example, their AR team was aware that one of their offering groups internally was having a challenge. So they knew it had to do with the strategy and the go-to-market planning of that offering. So AR organized a workshop. They brought Everest Group, they brought the line of business leaders from that team, their partners together to have a workshop to explore what this challenge was. And we were able to help them, get beyond some roadblocks that have helped them grow that part of the business. So then there was another opportunity with the same account where we got involved to help some sales dynamics or some sales initiatives. They were looking to target industry-specific accounts and to understand how to pursue those accounts most effectively. So AR brought Everest Group in to help shape the scope of that work, to refine the filtering of how to think about those accounts, and to hone the investment that the sales team was making in those accounts. And then thirdly, same AR team brought us in for some marketing thought leadership. And they had just completed an acquisition. AR was involved with that. So they took an initiative and a leadership role in saying, we need some thought leadership. Let's get a few research firms in here. And ultimately, they partnered with Everest Group. So these are examples of what happens organically when the organizations between research and AR know each other, and you can look at business cases together and brainstorm on how best to tackle them. Let's move on to the next slide. Just also wanted to highlight the some of this you've already heard from us, so I'm not going to touch it very much, but it is talking about how Everest Group tends to work with our AR partners in the marketplace, our universal access model, direct access to our analysts. So once you've established rapport with one of our analysts, you or your stakeholders are welcome to be in a direct dialogue with us. There are no constraints in that regard, right? It's more about availability and scheduling than it is about any rules around access. And we'd like to hear from you with your market briefings, and we identify what market briefings make sense for you, what market briefings make sense for us, even outside of a particular research flow. And keep in mind that you, as a member of Everest Group, if you're an AR practitioner, there's a whole portal that we have that's designed to help you run your day-to-day management of your relationship with Everest Group, and our RFIs and our peak matrix tools and all of that in one place. So I'm noticing the time. I'm going to wrap it up there. Wanted to see if we had questions come in and if we could tackle a couple of quick questions. Oh, we have a question. Has Everest Group identified any specific AI products that align really well with AR functions? Let me take a stab at that. I will say that I have not seen or heard many of you talking about a particular product. What I am observing is that the existing platforms that are out there, whether it's AR Insights Architect or Spotlight's Oz or some of the other tools, have been proactively building in more intelligence and more AI capability. But in general, I'm finding that whatever platforms your organizations are adopting broadly are coming into the AR space as well and are being deployed for your practitioner, your AR practitioners. We also had some questions that had come in ahead of time that I am having a hard time finding right now. CJ or Abhishek, did you pick up any of those advanced questions that you wanted to comment on?
There was one question around, is Everest planning to introduce an AI tool in the research portal? I have already addressed it in the chat. Yes, indeed, we already have one tool, Tashi. I have posted a link to that, which is aligned to our advanced SciTech research, but we are also looking at expanding the capabilities of Tashi, or come up with a Tashi-like tool to comprehensively cover most of our research. I won't let in on when that is going to come out, so that will be a surprise, but wait on that and see how Everest Group looks like as it engages or helps clients engage with our research later this year.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things is we are very careful about it. It's a delicate balance, right? So I don't think there is any shame in admitting that all analyst firms, or we believe that all analyst firms should, and we certainly do use a lot of AI enablement as throughput into the research process, right? And I think I'm a firm believer in doing that personally, right? But I think in terms of how that gets finally consumed by our end users, right? I think that is where the human analyst still has a significant role to play, right? So we are using a lot of AI, like everybody else, right, within our research process, within our internal functions, right? And we are clearly seeing the benefits, clearly lots more to be done.
Okay. So thank you both for covering that for us. And I want to thank CJ and Abhishek for their time, especially CJ. I know it's late evening for you. But thank you to everybody from India that joined. I appreciate your participation. A reminder that you will get emails that allow you to replay this and encourage your colleagues and peers to register to access it and take advantage of that discounted ticket price for Everest Group Elevate in September. We had a great time. We had a reception last year. We had a panel. We're going to do more of it and hope to see you there. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day and a good evening.